Settle into a comfortable position. Let the day fade and allow your breathing to slow, in and out. Tonight, we drift to a place far from the noise of the mainland, to an island where the sea whispers against white shores and where power once grew quietly, like vines beneath the forest canopy. This is Palawan, an island province stretched like a slender arm between the Sulu Sea and the South China Sea. A place of beauty so overwhelming that even corruption here seems to wear a disguise of calm. Imagine yourself walking through a coastal barangay at dawn. The air is soft and heavy with salt. Boats creak gently against the wooden stilts of a small pier. Roosters call in uneven chorus from scattered yards. Children, still half asleep, help their parents fetch water from blue plastic drums. Somewhere, a transistor radio hums a morning newscast. Faint, distant, almost blending with the sea breeze. In Palawan, life moves slowly. Fishermen rise before light, their nets damp and smelling faintly of the tide. Women sweep yards with coconut midribs, the rhythmic brushing blending with the morning wind. By mid-morning, the streets of the towns grow warm and dusty. Tricycles hum through narrow roads lined with small eateries and sari-sari stores. To live here is to be surrounded by abundance and distance at the same time. The mountains are lush, the waters rich, the skies unbroken. Yet beyond the horizon, most people know that decisions about their future are made not in their barangay halls, but in air-conditioned offices far away by men in collared shirts whose names are whispered, not spoken. You see, power in a place like this doesn't always shout. It settles quietly, like humidity in the air. Invisible, but always present. For many years, Palawan's people lived in the rhythm of waiting. Waiting for roads to be finished, waiting for classrooms to open, waiting for promises to be kept. The projects were many, always announced with ceremony: new school buildings, solar-powered facilities, roads that would finally link one far-flung town to another. But too often progress arrived half-built, a road ending abruptly in the forest, a school without a roof, a solar panel that never turned on. In small communities, people learned to shrug, to laugh quietly at the broken things. They would say, "That's how things are here. It starts but never finishes." And beneath the laughter was fatigue, the kind that doesn't shout, but simply settles in the bones of those who keep working anyway. At the center of it all was a government that seemed both present and absent. Local leaders always promising that the next project would be different, that next time the funds would arrive on time, that next time the roads would not wash away with the first heavy rain. Palawan was a province of paradoxes. It was rich in resources, yet many of its people remained poor. It hosted tourists in grand resorts, yet its farmers struggled to bring crops to market. It was paradise, with invisible cracks running beneath the surface. If you stood on a pier in Puerto Princesa at dusk, you could watch the sky bleed orange into purple over the water. It would be hard to imagine anything corrupt beneath such beauty. But corruption here did not announce itself with noise. It crept in with paperwork, signatures, and sealed envelopes. It was quiet, almost polite. Each project had its own story. A contractor chosen, a sum approved, a timeline announced. Some projects indeed brought progress. A school finished, a road paved. But many others faded into silence. The money moved, but the work did not. For the people, daily life continued, as it always does when promises are delayed. They cooked rice over charcoal stoves, sent children to schools with missing walls, and traveled dusty roads that turned to mud when it rained. The rhythm of their lives became a blend of hope and resignation. They believed in change, but they also learned to adapt when it never came. They learned to live with the irony that beauty and neglect could coexist in the same landscape. From a distance, the provincial capital gleamed in the sunlight. A white building surrounded by manicured lawns, the flag waving gently in the coastal wind. Inside, offices hummed with the slow shuffle of papers, air conditioners humming softly against the tropical heat. It was here, in those cool, quiet rooms, that decisions were made. About contracts, budgets, and projects worth billions of pesos. Few knew exactly how those decisions were made. Fewer still asked. In small provinces, questioning power could mean silence. Not always through fear, but through a quiet understanding that some things were better left unspoken. As the years passed, a name began to repeat in every corner of Palawan: Joel Reyes. A man who spoke with the easy confidence of a provincial leader, who promised efficiency, progress, and modernization. He was, for a time, the embodiment of order, a governor who seemed to know every barangay road, every fisherman's plea, every mayor's concern. To many, he was Palawan's protector, the one who could bring infrastructure to forgotten towns. To others, quietly, he was a man building not just a province, but an empire of his own. But that is a story that unfolds slowly, like the long shadow of the afternoon sun across the island's hills. For now, imagine again the people who lived beneath that shadow, the teachers who waited for classrooms to be finished, the drivers who maneuvered through unpaved roads, the farmers who loaded sacks of rice onto wooden boats because the promised bridge never arrived. They carried on, because in Palawan, life is patient. It bends with the tide, it endures. Even when power grows unchecked, the ordinary rhythms continue. Steady, resilient, like the sea itself. Pause, gentle transition tone. Soon, we will follow the path of the man at the center of this island's long twilight. The governor whose ambition once promised prosperity, but led instead to the quiet decay of trust. The island night deepens. The sound of crickets hums softly beneath the hum of electric fans and the distant rustle of palm trees. Imagine yourself walking slowly through the quiet streets of Puerto Princesa, the capital of Palawan, a town where the sea breeze carries both salt and diesel, where laughter drifts from small eateries lit by single yellow bulbs. It is here, in this calm place, that the story of power begins. Joel Reyes was not born into great wealth. Like many provincial leaders, he rose through persistence, through relationships, and through knowing how to move quietly but effectively. He understood how the island worked, its pace, its people, and its silences. He knew that in small communities, power did not always belong to those who shouted the loudest. It belonged to those who could listen, smile, and promise what everyone longed to hear. When he became governor, Palawan was on the edge of transformation. Tourism was growing. Foreign investors spoke of eco-parks and sustainable resorts. The province's image as the last frontier of the Philippines drew attention from Manila and abroad. There was money flowing, not wildly, but steadily, through programs meant for infrastructure, education, and public works. Reyes positioned himself as the man who could manage it all. He had the charisma of a local patriarch, approachable, humorous, often photographed shaking hands and smiling at ribbon cuttings. To many, he looked like progress itself. He could stand beside unfinished roads and speak confidently of a future where everything would connect, where farmers could bring goods faster, where schools would have electricity, where every town would feel closer to the capital. His administration was full of announcements, dozens of projects, each with a name, a budget, a purpose. There were contracts for school buildings in distant barangays, road projects winding through the mountains, solar panel systems for energy independence, and public infrastructure meant to uplift communities long forgotten. On paper, it was a golden era. Hundreds of millions, eventually over 1 billion pesos, were allotted to make Palawan shine brighter than ever. Each project bore a seal of promise, progress for all. But beneath the surface, something else was growing. Documents began to circulate quietly. Procurement records, bids, and approvals that all seemed too neatly aligned. Companies appeared, some newly formed, some with unclear histories. Contracts were awarded in patterns that repeated too perfectly. In some towns, workers waited for funds that never came. In others, they began construction only to stop halfway, without explanation. Still, the province continued to function. Salaries were paid, ceremonies continued. The machinery of government moved with its usual calm rhythm, a rhythm that often hides the sound of wrongdoing. Imagine yourself in one of those municipal halls, a fan turning lazily above, papers stacked neatly on a desk. Everything looks ordinary until you notice that behind each sheet of paper lies another, a hidden cost, a markup, a signature that links to someone's gain. For years, people did not see it, or perhaps they chose not to. After all, progress, even incomplete, still looked like movement. And in places long used to waiting, even a little change felt enough to quiet the questions. But whispers began to grow louder. Some contractors complained of delays in payment. Some engineers questioned why funds were divided into smaller contracts, making oversight harder, transparency thinner. And among local journalists, there were murmurs that some projects had been ghosts all along, existing only in paperwork. The governor denied any wrongdoing. He was confident, calm, and still smiling. He said his administration was misunderstood, that bureaucracy was to blame, that he had only wanted to fast-track progress for the people. For a time, it worked. He kept his position, his allies stayed loyal, and the people, tired of politics, moved on with their lives. But corruption, like tidewater, has a way of returning. Slowly, the national government began to take notice. Audits were made, quietly at first. Then reports surfaced, irregularities amounting to hundreds of millions of pesos. The numbers grew until they reached a staggering total, about 1.5 billion pesos in questionable transactions. Each contract told part of the same story. Infrastructure projects across municipalities, roads, school buildings, solar installations, many with poor documentation, many traced back to companies that were favored without proper bidding. The system had worked too smoothly for too long. And when the Sandigan Bayan, the country's anti-graft court, began its review, it found a pattern too precise to ignore. In 2025, the verdict came. Former Palawan Governor Reyes was found guilty of 11 counts of violating the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Each count carried a sentence, 6 years and 1 month to 10 years. Together, they added up to a lifetime, not of service, but of consequence. He was disqualified from ever holding public office again. The news spread slowly, like the afternoon tide rolling into quiet coves. People in Palawan heard it through radios, through Facebook posts, through hushed conversations at sari-sari stores. Some felt relief, others felt disbelief, and many felt nothing at all, as if this outcome was already part of the rhythm they had come to expect. Power rises and falls, they said, but life goes on. For those who lived through his years in office, the story was less about guilt and more about exhaustion. They had seen promises rise and fade so many times that even justice, when it arrived, felt distant, a sound carried faintly by the wind. And yet, in the quiet aftermath, something shifted. there was a sense of reckoning, a realization that even in the most beautiful corners of the country, the same currents of greed and ambition could flow unseen. If you stood again on that pier at sunset, you might feel it. The invisible weight of decisions made in rooms far away, now echoing across empty roads and half-built schools. Power, after all, leaves traces, not just in the headlines, but in the lives of those who must live among its ruins. As the night deepens and the waves brush softly against the shore, you begin to understand how corruption is not always loud or violent. Sometimes it moves slowly, patiently under the calm surface of daily life, until one day it simply surfaces, and the truth feels both inevitable and strangely quiet. Corruption, in history, rarely appears as a single act. It is not always the envelope passed under the table or the handshake behind a closed door. More often, it is an architecture, a structure built slowly over years, with layers of habits, customs, and silent approvals. In Palawan, this structure did not appear overnight. It took shape through the way people learned to navigate the system, through how leaders justified shortcuts, and through how entire institutions began to mistake convenience for progress. Imagine a government office on an ordinary weekday, a long wooden desk, a flickering fluorescent light, the steady hum of an old air conditioner. Stacks of paper form towers of bureaucracy. At the center, a clerk stamps each page with careful rhythm, the sound like a heartbeat of the institution. Each stamp, each signature, moves something forward, a contract, a budget, a permit. But somewhere between one page and the next, intent becomes blurred. Was the contractor chosen because of merit? Was the project reviewed properly? Did anyone ask where the excess millions went? Sometimes no one did. Not because they didn't care, but because the system itself made it difficult to care. Too many steps, too much paperwork, and too little consequence for anyone who stayed quiet. It begins with rationalization. It's just one signature. It's just one project adjustment. It's only a small percentage. Everyone does it. And so the architecture grows like coral beneath the waves, invisible, intricate, built one tiny piece at a time. In the Philippines, the bureaucracy of development is often like a maze. A project begins with a proposal from the province. It moves to the regional office, then to the department in Manila, then to an approving committee, then to procurement, and finally back again to the local government for execution. At each stop, it can change, a clause adjusted, a budget modified, a contractor replaced. Each layer provides plausible deniability, a way to say, it wasn't me, it was the system. Joel Reyes understood that system well. He had been in politics long enough to know where the walls were thin, where accountability blurred, and where the paperwork could be written to favor those who already held the pen. To some, this was simply politics as usual. To others, it was the quiet tragedy of a place that deserved better. The corruption in Palawan's contracts wasn't about luxury, it was about control, the kind that looks ordinary. A company wins a bid, builds half a structure, and moves on. Funds are reallocated, reports are filed. Inspectors visit briefly, note delays due to weather, and leave. The buildings remain, unfinished shells, standing like monuments to a promise that was never meant to be fulfilled. When you travel through the province, you might still see them. A concrete road that ends abruptly in tall grass, a school missing windows, a solar panel covered in dust, all quietly blending into the landscape. To most passers-by, they are simply part of the scenery now, forgotten, unremarkable, ordinary. And that is how corruption endures, by becoming part of what feels normal. Soft, reflective pause. Historians often say that corruption is not just about greed, it's about culture, a culture of silence, of compromise, of weary acceptance. In small communities, people learn early not to challenge those in power. The governor, the mayor, the councillor, they are figures of stability. And stability in uncertain times feels safer than change. Even those who see the flaws sometimes choose quiet over confrontation. A teacher waiting for her classroom to be finished may still thank the governor in public, because she knows that gratitude keeps her request alive, while criticism could make it vanish. This is how systems protect themselves, by making loyalty more rewarding than truth. And so the architecture stands not of concrete or steel, but of habits and fears, layered with paperwork and politeness. By the time investigators arrived in Palawan, the structure was already complete. The contracts, the signatories, the audit trails all existed neatly. Each transaction appeared justified. Only when seen together did the pattern reveal itself. 11 contracts, all traced to the same circle of power, all benefiting those aligned with the governor's authority. It was almost beautiful in its precision. A design of corruption so orderly that it could have been mistaken for efficiency. Gentle pause. When the Sandigan Bayan rendered its decision, it wasn't just the governor who was on trial. It was the system that allowed him to thrive, a system that blurred the lines between governance and self-interest, between service and survival. The judgment, in that sense, was both justice and mirror, a reflection of how even paradise can decay when unchecked power grows quietly beneath it. In the months after the verdict, officials spoke of reforms, new oversight mechanisms, transparency efforts, community audits. But for most Palawan residents, life continued much as before. The same markets, the same roads, the same rhythm of tides and work. The architecture remained, perhaps slightly shaken, but still standing in the habits of everyday governance. Soft background hum, as if the night deepens further. And yet, not all was lost. Among the younger generation, the teachers, the students, the small business owners, there were whispers of change. They spoke of accountability, of digital tracking, of citizens' budgets made public online. Tiny cracks in the structure where light began to seep in. Perhaps that too is part of history's slow mercy, that even in places long shaped by silence, truth eventually finds a way to echo, quietly but persistently, like waves wearing down stone. Pause, then very soft tone. As the night moves onward, you may feel a sense of calm understanding, that corruption, while deeply human, is not eternal. It is built, yes, but it can also be unbuilt. One signature, one audit, one act of courage at a time. And so we turn to the final part of our story, where power meets the ordinary, and where the lives of the people once overshadowed continue to endure under the same sun that once shone on the governor's empire. Power has always existed in two worlds. One is built from glass and marble, the world of offices, contracts, and authority. The other is built from earth, wood, and salt, the world of daily labor, of people whose hands shape life quietly. In Palawan, these two worlds often stood side by side, and yet they rarely touched. Imagine the governor's residence during his years of rule. A gated property surrounded by trees, the driveway lined with carefully trimmed hedges. Inside, the air was cool, the furniture imported, the rooms echoing softly with the hum of conversation. Guests arrived in government vehicles, their words measured, their laughter polite. Decisions about millions of pesos were made at tables polished smooth from years of use. Documents were signed with pens that carried more weight than any tool used by the people outside the gates. Now imagine, at the same hour, a fisherman in a small village near Taytay or Roxas. His hands smell faintly of sea and rope. He counts the day's catch beneath the dim glow of a kerosene lamp. The night is warm, his home made of wood and woven palm leaves. He has never seen the inside of the Capitol building, but the decisions made there shape his life every day. The road he takes to market, the price of fuel, the school his children attend. 2 lives, 2 worlds, one defined by influence, the other by endurance. For a long time, this divide seemed natural, almost accepted. The people looked upward for change, while those in power looked downward for votes. Every few years, promises bridged the gap. New projects, new slogans, new ceremonies. And for a while, the 2 worlds seemed to meet. Then slowly, they drifted apart again. After Joel Reyes' conviction, that distance became clearer. The image of power cracked, but the daily routines below it continued as always. Children still walked barefoot to school. Vendors still sold vegetables by the roadside. Farmers still tilled the soil under the same heat that had seen countless governors come and go. In time, people spoke less of the case. It became another story, folded into the long memory of the province. A reminder, yes, but also a weariness that the poor know well. Power had fallen, but poverty remained. And yet, even in this imbalance, there was something unbreakable. The quiet persistence of those who never had power to begin with, but who continued to live, work, and hope anyway. Soft, almost whispering tone. If you walk through a Palawan village at sunrise, you can feel that endurance in every sound. The gentle clatter of pots in small kitchens, the slow rhythm of oars hitting water as fishermen push out to sea, the laughter of children chasing each other down dusty roads. There is honesty in these small moments, the kind that power cannot corrupt, because it exists beyond politics, beyond wealth. And historians often look at corruption as failure, but here, perhaps, it is more useful to see it as contrast, a way to measure what truly lasts. Governors rise and fall, but the rhythm of ordinary life remains constant, soft and enduring, like the tide. Palawan's people have lived through much. They have seen roads promised and never finished, bridges built and washed away, names of leaders changing but the system staying the same. And yet they continue to plant, to fish, to teach, to sing. Perhaps that is their quiet form of resistance, to continue living fully, even when power falters. Long pause, faint wind, then calm narration resumes. Some say justice comes when the guilty are punished. But here, justice feels more like patience, the slow, steady hope that tomorrow will still bring light, and that the sea will still provide, no matter who holds the title of governor. If you stand on the hills overlooking the sea, you might see the 2 worlds at once. The Capitol building, white and proud against the horizon. And beyond it, the small towns, roofs of tin and palm, scattered like stars. They are connected not by wealth or power, but by history. A shared story of resilience and forgetting, of promises made and promises endured. Over time, the scandals fade from conversation. But the lesson remains. The progress cannot be built on greed, and that even the quietest places deserve honesty. Soft, reflective tone. Tonight, as you rest, you may feel a sense of calm in knowing that even in the most unjust times, human beings continue to find balance. The people of Palawan still rise with the sun, still share food with neighbors, still mend their boats, still laugh despite the cracks in the system that surrounds them. They are proof that life in its simplest form is stronger than corruption, stronger than ambition, and far more lasting than power. Very soft background tone, fading waves. So let the story settle now. The island, once heavy with promises, grows quiet again. The governor's empire has crumbled into memory. The papers have been filed, the sentences handed down. But beyond those walls, the sea keeps moving, the wind keeps blowing, and the people keep living. History, after all, does not end with verdicts. It continues in the laughter of children, in the patience of farmers, in the gentle rhythm of the waves that touch every shore. Take a deep breath now, in and out. Let the noise of politics fade and return to the calm simplicity of the island's night. You are surrounded by stillness, by the whisper of the ocean, by the distant hum of cricket, by the slow beating of time itself. The world of power is quiet now. Only the sea remains awake, endlessly watching, endlessly forgiving. And as you drift towards sleep, remember this. Even in a world built on corruption and broken promises, there will always be people who live gently, who endure honestly, and who remind us that truth, though silent, never dies. Sleep now. The island is at peace. The story is complete. And the past, like the tide, has receded, leaving only the calm that follows every storm.